Thank you. Thank you very much. And thanks for being here. Good evening. Bonsoir tout le monde. You know, I want to say thank you to the many volunteers, the people that put this together, the people that are working so hard in the entire campaign. I mean, it's great to see so many show up tonight and be part of this, and it takes a lot. It takes a lot from people that dedicate their time, their energy, and their effort. And I can't begin to name them all, but we have a great team that are working hard to change the province. And I'm just proud to be part of it, and I'm proud to be associated with each and every one of them. I also, you know, Rob mentioned certainly my family, my wife Marcia, who's obviously a constant supporter and someone who not only we confide in on a regular basis, mind you, but I get great advice. And my daughters, who are all over, but they stay in touch. They're always here. You know, I tried a little something that I heard at a meeting, so I tried it at home to see what the reaction would be with Marcia. So I asked the question. I said, "So Marcia, did you ever think that I'd be running for the leader of a political party?" And she said, "No, but I knew whomever I married would." So anyway, we're a partner. We work together. And to all of you that are here tonight, we're here for one reason. We each care deeply about the future of this province. And we each recognize how good we can be in our own way. But it takes each one of us in our own way to be part of that solution. My title of my talk tonight is Recycle New Brunswick is not an environmental term. We do it every election cycle. We do it continually. So why am I here at this point in my life? You know, I said my children, I have two in Ontario, one in Bangkok, and one soon to be in Nova Scotia. Rob mentioned, it's not about my children, it's about our children. Each one of us have a story about our kids working and living somewhere else. And how do we bring them home? How do we make this province the right place to be, but more importantly, make them feel like they can contribute to this place that we call home? I feel like I lived in a Brunswick dream with my family. My parents, Marcia's parents, my children knew their grandparents well. We grew up within the right distance apart, and it was great. You got that, eh? So it kept harmony within the field. Now, it took a long time for me to kind of settle in with my mother-in-law, but she's wonderful. And she still is. She didn't accept me at first. The long hair and the motorcycle, I think that's what did it. But the point is, the dream of growing up with your family and having your entire family next to you that help to nurture and grow your kids, help your kids represent and be part of and recognize the values that we share collectively and the values that we used to have in this province and still do in many cases and still can in many cases and still need to push. I've seen firsthand the tremendous opportunities and the potential for this province, but I've seen it through a different lens. I didn't come from a deep political history, as many know. My background was in the private sector. I spent a lot of hours working and working hard to do whatever I could to further the interests of the company that I worked for. I want to take that experience in managing, directing, negotiating, working with teams to get results. I want to do that very same thing for this province, and we were doing it. We were doing it in the 4 years that we were there. We saw it. The results were coming to the plate. And you know what was the greatest surprise of all? Is there's 50,000 people in the system that want to be part of it. And why can't they be part of it? Because of the politics. They can't be part of it because the priorities change each and every time an election changes. And so this time, it has to be different. I'm a New Brunswicker first. I'm a Conservative second. And I'm proud of it. A friend of mine passed me in the hall, and he said, "Well, I hear you're running for the Premier's job. You got to follow your dreams." And I corrected him. I said, "This is not a dream for me. This is a mission. It's a mission for our province to finally get back on track, and for the adults in the room to take a role in fixing it and fixing it right, and because it can be done." What I saw in the system, even in a poor economy, we had enough money in the system to not only fulfill our needs, but to exceed what we currently need in this province or what we currently have. We could go so much better. Had we stayed the course, we would have been within $100 million of a balanced budget right now, on target for a balance next year without the HST. We didn't need it. And why didn't we need it? Because every day we were managing the service delivery better. Nothing different than I would have done for 33 years in the private sector. Nothing different than each one of you would do every day in your household, in your business. It was just applying that same logic to government. So why are we so far removed? The difference was we were able to engage the workforce. We were developing leaders. Success is directly related to the people getting involved, owning it, developing a plan, and sticking with the plan. We'd achieve greater accountability. We'd set a new path for the Auditor General to get better visibility into government. We'd create an Accountability Act that drove better behavior from politicians. But we were told when it was repealed in the first year of this government's mandate, well, we don't really need that to govern properly. Well, we've seen how that works. And we've also seen that in the last third quarter results, they aren't even out yet. 3 months and waiting. Leading by example changes people's attitude. You can't say one thing and do another. We cut our own pensions 47%. We adopted the same pension program as anybody else. And when I've talked to people and they'd say, well, you think you'd fix your own pension? And I'd say, well, let me tell you what we did to that. Wow, we didn't know that. Because if you do to yourself what you expect others to do, they will be part of it. And they'll join you in that fight, in that mission. We had a steady and methodical approach. Our deficit was down $450 million. Our growth rate in expenses was down 6 to 1.5%. And you know, why is this important? Because we'll talk about growing the economy, which I'll talk about this in a minute. We absolutely need to move forward and get our economy rolling again. But when you look at statistics, you find that every government spends its revenue. In this province, you can go back 20, 30 years, and you can find that if the expenses went up, or the revenue went up, the expenses went up. Revenue went up, expenses went up. And how do you see like Newfoundland now with oil prices being down? They're in trouble. They've had a 16% increase in their expenses over a time when they should have been able to really get their finances under control. The same thing is in Alberta, same thing in Saskatchewan. So no one's planning, no one's managing. And what was one of the biggest triggers for me the first few days in government, we had an $8 billion budget, and we were within 0.5% of that budget. Can you imagine being that good in your business? There's no way you're that good. You've got $8 billion in the cupboard, and you're spending every cent. And when it's gone, you stop spending. So that's how we were managing. We ended up putting rules and regulations in place for shale gas development and responsible natural gas development. But now we see an indefinite moratorium. Now, there's all kinds of reasons. But you know why the moratorium's continuing? Because investors have left town. Business come with a sense of urgency. The only sense of urgency in government is between when you're elected and when you're going to get reelected. That has to change if we're going to change the province. We have to respect the needs. We introduced the first operational excellence program. All that was is getting better value for your tax dollars. It was so you could look at government and say, they're spending my dollars wisely. I don't mind paying taxes. And you know what that changes? That changes the need for people to hide their tax payments, to do things under the table because they feel I'm getting value. But when you're getting shafted, well, you feel differently about how you kick back. And that's the opportunity. We have to be different. So how am I different? Besides some of the obvious traits of being just a tad older, some of my opponents. When we got out of office 2 years ago, I thought, well, I'm going to meet with the new government because I always worked with my successors. I worked with people that were coming, I was there before me. I learned from them. I went out and said, okay, here's what I learned, or here's what have you learned. How do I build on what you've learned? I developed a 15-page presentation working with my colleagues in the civil service and presented it, every detail of what we knew, where we were going, how we were getting there, what the project plan was, who was delivering results, and what the opportunities for this province. But the most important thing I said, I will not be out there complaining or opposing something that I would have agreed to last week. I will not be opposing it this week because we're not in government. But guess what? That was all gone within 6 months. All of it gone. I was shocked. I said, how can that be? There may be things you don't like. That's always the way with a new program. But it just couldn't all be thrown out. My goal has never been to play the political game. It's been to change it. I didn't come here for a career in politics. I'm actually staying longer than I intended because I hoped the job would be done. But it's not done. But it can be done, and that's the goal. I've said it many times. I will not buy your vote. I am a different politician. I will earn it. And if you feel I earn it, then I need your support. You know, we've got into situations where, you know, one case where one gentleman said, you know, you promised to reinstate the ferry and I'll vote for you. Well, you know, I believe in the ferry system. I think it's integral to our rural system in the province. But you know, it's not, I don't want to do this and have both hands squarely behind my back when I get to the finish line. I want to be able to fix the province. I believe in performance management. I believe in visible and transparent accountability and processes, not programs that are invented for the speech of the day or the thought for the day. I believe that we need a very solid focus on measurement that allows in every category for us to say, how good are we becoming? You know, I'm not bilingual. Marcia and I are working on that, however, and it's kind of fun. You know, we can go through great periods and not talk to each other because we're trying to remember what to say. So it's working. It's working. But my focus is on provincial issues as a premier would be as intense as my focus were on finances as a finance minister. I knew the job had to be done, and that was my focus. I know now we have bigger issues, and we need to focus in that. My job was always directly related to getting the job done. It wasn't about talking. It wasn't about saying we'll do better. It was about actually demonstrating that aspect. I believe integrity, fairness, and trust as being hallmarks to any successful program. Mistakes are corrected. They're not ignored. They're not blamed on somebody else. They're fixed, and we move on. I believe common sense must be a factor in every decision. Our children, you know, I think our children should be riding together in the same bus. I think it's a social experience. I think we need to think about that. I had a different way of entering politics. I remember one of the top hot topic items when I first ran in 2010 was a 6-lane highway from the city to the valley. I said, what do we need a 6-lane highway for? Well, you know, I said, well, I've traveled that for 30 years. Why do we need a 6-lane highway? So anyway, it was a $37 million project. And I actually campaigned against it. But we need improvements along the accesses, the exits. But we don't need to spend this kind of money on infrastructure when other services are failing. We need to move quickly on files, and I can do that. I come with no training required. I've been there. I've seen it. We can pick up the ball, we can move it forward, and we can make it happen on the first day in office. I believe that we can, with a strong work ethic, we can have the changes we need in this province that will absolutely make a difference. We've been sitting 12 days this year so far. Legislature's pretty hectic. Now, there are MLA issues here in the valley, so that's good. Because as far as being in the legislature, it's like that hardly exists anymore. And we are sitting now half of the time that we used to. And so what does that do for democracy? Our past and current practices. Politics, as it is practiced in this province today, is the single biggest barrier to the success of this province. The political agenda, no matter what the party, always trumps the provincial reality. And it's time to put the province first and the politics second. The tax and spend philosophy has to stop. We see the HST, we've seen a whole year spent trying to convince us we all needed the HST. I've told you that we didn't need it. We've seen announcements made on every job being bought and paid for, tax-funded job programs. The election promising of 2014, and we didn't participate in that, or I wouldn't be standing here in front of you today. We did in 2010, and we fought hard to get over that hurdle by 2014. I was in a CBC panel back several months ago, And I was talking about this whole thing about the tax spending, and people didn't talk about the HST at the time of the campaign. And Victor Boudreau said to me, I said, you know, you promised everything to everybody. It's a $30 million spend versus a $300 million a year spend. And he said, that's why we're in government and you're in opposition. And you know that's right. We have been bought by the promises, and we are paying for them dearly. And it's every election, it sets us back further. Every time we have an election. Now you could say, well, let's move the elections out. Well, that would be progress, but I wouldn't start just yet. That isn't a recommendation I got here just for now. You know, we've seen the headlines versus content, and where's that happen? We've seen the seniors' assets issue, we've seen the program review. Every item on that program review was something I reviewed with Victor Boudreau and his project team within 2 months of them coming to office, except for one item, and it was put names on buildings and bridges. We didn't have that one. There was a real clincher there we missed. We had red tape reduction. We had CFIB reporting that was saying we're getting better, because we've had businesses complain about how are you helping business get better. CFIB rated us better every single year. Guess what that's doing now? Going the exact opposite way in terms of a red tape reduction and improvement. We had now, then comes free tuition. Well, where did that come from? So if the legislature's ever sitting, just show up with a T-shirt or a banner, because the next week you're going to get something on that. Because that's where it came from. Students were there 1 week. Hold on, just save your breath. We'll be back 2 weeks later. So there it comes, free tuition. And you're saying, well, every student should have access to money to go to school. But does that mean it needs to be free? And when you look at this program, who's paying for that program? I've had parents come to my office and say, I'm above the $60,000 threshold. I need to do something different here. This is not right. Why am I working? Because I'm going to be penalized for saving money or working hard to send my kids to school, and I no longer get the tax rebate. But why is it done? If you listen to the words around it, it's, well, we did it because we want to fill up universities. What is our goal? Is our goal to fill up universities, or is our goal to produce an educated student that actually can get a job and move the province forward? Let's not treat the symptom. Let's fix the issue, and let's deal with it. I believe, and we see this, in community college, the success rate's about 85% for getting employment when you graduate. Universities is around 60, 65. So where's the problem? So where do we start? And how do we develop the future? Well, first of all, we need to find a meaningful way to protect the working class, the people that are delivering and paying the taxes and are making this province a better place to live because they're willing to put in the effort for us to get there. We need to find a way that causes people to say, I want to come to New Brunswick, because New Brunswick is the place to live and it's got its act together. And we can do that. You know, certainly when you look at some of the issues and you get in a case of saying, well, what about the educational system? Our outcomes are well below the Canadian average. And you look at the issue that is still here after 45 years, the language tensions that are in our province. Why is that? What was the original plan? And are we on track? And if we are, how are we graduating 70% plus of our students without being fluently bilingual in this province after 45 years? How did we get there? And there's different teachers and different stories that can be told in relation to what happens in a classroom. And I'll just read a paragraph and one illustration. So this is a class of 24 students. At least 12 are below grade level in both literacy and numeracy. On a daily basis, in numeracy and literacy, I'm planning and teaching at the grade 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 levels. 5 students have personal learning plans, which really only consists of giving them extra time to complete tasks, decreasing the amount of work, and using assistive technology when available. The planning and teaching of 5 curriculums is very demanding and time-consuming, especially for new teachers who have never taught those grade levels before. Right now, we have no support at the school, and many of my students are struggling with 0 support at home. Teachers are struggling in the classroom, and how did they get there? How many curriculums have we as successive governments invented along the way? And when do we establish at a higher level, what do we want our students graduated with what capability? And then stand back and say, we're going to monitor that performance, and collectively we're going to make sure that our kids receive that. But it's the people in the system, the professionals in the system, that have the knowledge, the capability, and the intensity to make it happen. We look at areas, in the case of one school principal, been in the system for many years. He says 80% of our resources are focused on 20% of the students. And we are not ensuring that every child reaches its full potential. We are not making the outcomes that we must. If you look in healthcare, we want to expand our capability, not duplicate it. We want to provide complementary services in both French and English hospitals. We want to evaluate the effectiveness of hospitals. Family medicine reform, how well are we doing on that after all these years? I just learned a stat tonight in relation to 50,000 people still on waiting lists for a family doctor. And when do we have a personal responsibility in better health? You know, I'm going to use a personal example, my brother, who just in the last 6 months, he drove truck for many, many years and retired about 2 years ago. And he was a smoker, quit smoking just like that, about 4.5 years ago. He's my older brother, by the way, just to clarify that. And he decided he was going on a weight reduction program. He was diagnosed with diabetes about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago. He decided this spring, I'm going on a weight reduction program. So he started it back in the early year in January. He's lost 60 pounds, no longer on insulin, no longer on any medication, and feeling like he's 20 years younger because he took his own personal initiatives that my health is going to get in order. So how do we take a role here in our healthcare and play a role in making it better because we're going to be part of it? I was at the drugstore this morning, and I met with the pharmacists, and we got talking about methadone injection. And a great portion of methadone addiction has been related to prescription drugs. So how do we deal with that? How do we treat the cause? How do we start to move in a direction that we don't keep building it? When I was in finance, I remember the cost for methadone had gone from like $4 million a year to $8 million a year, and now they're probably 10. So where do we start to zero in on some of these things and actually start to make a difference? When I think of economic development and where we can move in this area, we started a little program, and I called it portfolio management. And the idea was to have better criteria, because you think about it. We all come into the cabinet room, and this whole package could be 50 pages long, comes in, and it's all this financial document for a business. And so we're all looking at this and poring over it and saying, okay, well, what does this look like, and how does that work? And I'll give you an example of how it works. I had a senior individual present a case, and it was a case where a company wanted to convert from heavy oil to natural gas. And the department presenting said, you know, we'd like to give this company $500,000. And I looked at the financials, and the financials were good. I said, this company's in good shape. I said, you know, it's got capital reserve, it's in good shape. I said, why are we investing in this? Well, this is a good project, you know, it's an energy saving project, this is good. I said, but they'll do it anyway. It must be a return on this investment, must be like less than 5 years. And the answer was, yes, actually it's 3. Well, why are we in the middle of it? And the guy looks at me and says, well, I got $500,000 in my budget, what else am I going to do with it? Now, when you think of that, I'm saying now, is that the type of individual that should be looking at the economic development opportunities for this province? But is it that individual's fault? No. He would have got direction that we wanted to support this company. And by the way, we didn't invest that $500 million. I guess that's why in some cases I wasn't very popular. But things have to make sense. And we need to invest in the province where the rate of return is good. We need to take equity stake on investments, so if you do well, the government does well. We get our money back to invest somewhere else, because there are communities in the province that we need to help. Our rural communities are being devastated, and we need to find ways to have meaningful investment, not investment that just simply is there because we can say we invested. We need stability in government regulations. We talked about the moratorium. Stability in tax structures. Look how this moves around. Here we have a case where we've increased corporate business tax. And our philosophy is to drop the small business tax, while at the same time raising property tax. In the previous government, prior to our first mandate, so this was going back into the Sean Graham years. The plan was to raise small business tax from 1% to 5% and to reduce corporate business tax from 14% to 8%. Just the opposite of what's happening now. So my point is, you could probably do this with anybody in any government, but there's no long-term view of what drives the best behavior for our province. It's just what'll sell today to change the revenue stream. And that's as steep as it gets. So we're passing through as politicians. And we need to find a better structure in government to create the talent that allows the province to do better. When I look at areas in terms of how can we do better, we need a reorganization of the government that provides better information. You've heard, some of you may have heard me say this before. Premier goes in office and how's government doing? Well, I didn't see anything in the paper today, so I think it's good. There's nothing tweeted. CBC looks good. I think we're good. We got to go deeper than that. It's an $8.5 billion business. And it's a business that needs to be run to deliver better services, better outcomes in education, better outcomes in aging care, better outcomes on our whole fiscal management, but allow us to do more with the dollars we have. And it's there to be done, and that is the goal. Restructuring, building talent, building successors in the system that present to government. Here's our plan in education. Here's the track we was on because we had all-party support on these objectives. And so it stands the test of an election. We've had a tax, the 5 priorities that I look at in this area would be in the case of health, education, economic development, aging care, and fiscal management. Now, do you think that as Liberals, Conservatives, NDP, Green, People's Alliance, whomever, we could sit in a room and develop the right outcomes for what we want to see in our educational system? Could we sit in the room and develop the right outcomes for our health network, how good we can be? I'm sure of it. And then stand back and say, okay, here's how we want, and here's what we want you to achieve. And when all parties kind of put it together, you get buy-in from one government to the next. And I have some real examples of that, of how that's working. NB Power would be one of them. A strong board in NB Power developed, we gave NB Power a mandate to run more like a business. Get out of the way and let us run more like a business, get onto a debt equity program of, let's say, an 80-20 split, and get into a position to refurbish Mactaquac in the future and get our energy costs stabilized and to get our capital plan in order so we could control future spending. One of the real telltales of that was when the board came and presented to us in Cabinet a list of 4 appointments they wanted on their board. Appointments of qualified people to make a difference and provide the right skill set on that board. And guess what? We said, fine, do it. That had never been done before because it usually had to be Bob's uncle or somebody else. And that's fine, but Bob's uncle better be capable of doing the job. And that's the difference. We need to match up the skill sets with the work required. NB Liquor's the same thing. We ended up going through a process to put a CEO in place. The first CEO that's ever survived an election, because every other CEO in NB Liquor was someone put on the bus during the campaign, and then became CEO. I mean, I guess if you spent 6 months on the bus, you had to have some reward, and that was it. But the point is, how do we change it? It has been changed. That CEO is still there. And I remember the the president of NB Liquor telling me that, we actually did this, and it's the first time I've ever worked with someone who actually knows the business. Now, when you think how good we can be, how sad is that? So where are the opportunities? We're 50,000 strong in this province, and we have people dedicated to making a difference, and we need to utilize that talent. So I can stand up here and I can say, I'm going to create 5,000 new jobs. Just don't ask me how I'm going to do it. I'm going to promise you this and that and the other thing because I'm going to spend your tax dollars to do it. What I can tell you is we can stabilize the province, deliver better results, and get better outcomes, and I'm sure of it because I've seen the opportunity and I've been there. And we control the unnecessary spending so we can lower personal taxes, we can lower property taxes, and the biggest opportunity to do it is at election time. So how does this process work? That I'm in right now. So I see the political camps are forming, on traditional political lines. Many people will not get involved. I mean, this is great tonight. I mean, it is really encouraging to see so many people here tonight. And I'm hoping we've got cross-pollination going on tonight. And what I mean by that is I'm hoping we find a way to work together. Because for me, it's not about the party, it's about the province. And how do we make a difference? And I assure you that any opportunity I have to represent this province, it'll be done in the best interest of this province. So revolutionary change can happen, and we can fix a province. I've seen it. I could go through reams of information that would tell you, wow, and probably shock you and say, I just don't believe this could be the case. I believe that I'm the only candidate that offers the experience, the knowledge, and the reality, a vision with the reality for a completely new approach. It's not about inventing a new message. It's not telling just promise me this and promise me that. It's like we can and we will do better. It's a vision that will see sustainable and a long-term process that will withstand the pressures of the 4-year cycle. A vision that we will see our province once again on a path to continuous improvement. And every elected official will work towards that because they see the goal. They see the ability for us to do better and to bring our kids home. I started in the entrance in politics in 2010 with the slogan, "It's time to serve." And I see it's quite a popular theme. It's time. Well, you're right. It's time, all right. It's time to have a leader that is not seeking a career in politics. It's time to have a leader with the independence of making the right decisions for the province, not the politically correct ones. It's time to have a leader with real experience and a proven track record that goes beyond words, and to have a leader that understands the issues firsthand because I've been there, I've done that, and I had the tools to work with when I started. The tools are still there. Some of the people are missing. We need them back. And we can make this thing work again, and we will be amazed at the results. We need a leader that will continue to be accountable. I'm not afraid of being measured on results, and any of you know where I worked through my entire career. Measurement was a daily routine. And you know, it got to be a challenge at first, and it got to be a real opportunity afterwards, because it was almost fun, like catch me today, I'm ready. So that's how I feel. Catch me today, I'm ready. Because we can do this, and we can do it now, or we can put it off, or we can say, well, you know, maybe the politics will continue and it'll get better. Well, you know, the fact is we've governed by trial and error now for a long time. So let's stop the trial and error approach, and let's look at their credentials. Let's decide who can deliver for this province and why they're there and what opportunity exists, because it's real. I want to be a leader that actually admits that our problem is politics. But our problem is not the people, and it's not the politicians. Because every one of my colleagues, and particularly the ones that are here in this room tonight, who want to change this province, they're doing it because they feel they can make a difference. We're elected by ridings who want something to the riding, and that's how we get elected. But this time, we're going to push for what's right for the province. And we need everybody on board to do that. And I'm proud that people like Rob, Sherry, Bill are part of this team. Gary's here tonight as well. And it's just great. Did I miss anyone? Because that's certainly what it's going to take. So it's time for politicians to put the stripes down and stand up for our province. It's not about being a PC, a Liberal, an NDP. It's not about being a Green or People's Alliance. It's about New Brunswick. And this time, we have a chance to make a difference. I've postponed my retirement now twice. And at some point, you have to give up on that, right? But I don't think I'm there yet. And with my colleague, you know, as part of this whole process, being very supportive, we can make a difference, and we can do it right. And you being here tonight is going to be a long ways towards that. But, you know, it's not good enough to say, I hope you do well. Because I've seen the camps aligning, as I mentioned. I've seen where we're going and making deals and this sort of thing, and I've said, look, I'm not interested in that. Well, fine, you'll be retired. Well, and I say, well, maybe that's not so bad. But that's not the point. The point is that if you believe that it's time that we can make a difference, if you believe me that I'm not here for a political career, which I'm absolutely not, and if you believe what I'm telling you about the opportunities in this province and that I see it from a very different lens, and it's because of my background, That's why I see better ways to deliver on the services that we have, and it doesn't involve more revenue. But it doesn't mean we don't do better deals. We don't bring companies into this province. We don't strike deals that raise our economy and our growth level for jobs, because we absolutely need to do that. But we'll do it with a team of people that are interested in building the province and have the capability to do it, not spending their budget because they need to do that, because that's how they're measured. We can and we will fix the province. But I need you and your friends, no matter what party affiliation, to be involved, to sign up people to help. I won't disappoint you, but I can't do it alone. Thank you very much.